Hi, everybody. Thanks for being with me. I'm Dave Elliott. We're going to start with crime, a new public safety initiative now in place to help curb violent crime in our capital city. Mississippi Department of Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell right here, right now to talk about what they're calling Operation Unified. Commissioner, good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
This isn't directly related to last year's initiative to expand the authority geographically of the Capitol Police, but it's kind of an extension of that. I'm just curious, before we talk about this new effort, has that Capitol Police expansion, is there any data to show that that's made a difference yet?
Well, the actual expansion takes place July 1st.
Okay.
And so we have a little bit of time for that, but we have been given jurisdiction throughout the city. The city of Jackson and their police department have primary jurisdiction everywhere except for the CCID, where Capitol Police have primary jurisdiction. But we have been involved in several efforts outside of the CCID. And I can tell you, in looking back at some data over the last several years, between 2021, 2022, and the second half of 2021, we had about 7 arrests in the CCID for felonies. Since 2022 and the first half of 2023, we've had over 700 felony arrests.
So that's police presence.
That's police presence and an active police force that I believe has made a difference.
When that was announced, there was some friction between the governor, who kind of initiated all of this, and the city of Jackson. But with this last announcement this week, you had Mayor Lumumba there, Chokwe Lumumba, the mayor of Jackson. So he supports this unified effort. Everybody's kind of on the same page. There's no controversy. There are no territorial turf battles.
Well, I think there's always going to be a little bit of that, but I can tell you much of the undertones have subsided. And I think what we did with Capitol Police is we reached out to our law enforcement partners at JPD and Hinds County, and over the last year and a half, we've told them, look, we want to make the city of Jackson safer. We want to work with you all, and let's do everything we can to have a safe capital city. And that's really started to resonate. In fact, I met with the mayor before the press conference over the weekend, and one of the discussions we've had, and something I've tried to emphasize, is if we can take the politics out of public safety, that's best for all the citizens. And the good news for politicians, it's good politics when you have good public safety. So I think that resonated, and everybody realizes that having safe cities where people can live and send their children to school and we can have visitors come is really best for everybody under all circumstances.
Now, there's also a federal component to this. So what would be what is this, kind of DEA or something like that would be involved in this, since it probably involves drug dealers and things like that?
That's right. We're working with DEA and ATF as well as the FBI. And just recently, last week, Capitol Police was able to secure the arrest of an individual that was involved in a drive-by shooting back in October. And with that arrest, the feds have already stepped in and charged that person with possession of illegal firearm. They had these Glock weapons with modified switches, which essentially made it a fully automatic pistol. And so we've already seen the benefits of working with the federal law enforcement partners and the U.S. Attorney on those efforts.
No, I don't need to tell you this because you're a coast guy. But down here on the coast, a lot of people don't know a lot about Jackson and how Jackson has changed over the last 10, 15 years, where there's been this flight to Madison County, Brandon, Clinton, and all these other places because of crime in the city. How bad is it, and how important do you think it is for Jackson, our state's capital city, to try to get a handle on this?
I think it's very important. I mean, the reality is it's everybody that lives in Mississippi, that's your capital city. And that's where you may go if you have a hearing at the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals. You might go to visit the state capitol. You might have a meeting with DEQ or another state agency, or you might just be there to go to one of our many state museums or the state fairgrounds. And so when you go there, or when you send your kids there, you want to know that they're reasonably safe. And again, that's our capital city, and I think we have an obligation to make it safe. But this isn't just a unique effort that we've done with the city of Jackson. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago, we announced a public safety effort down here on the coast where we partnered with our federal partners, our local partners, and our state agencies on trying to do some interdiction on our interstates and trying to combat fentanyl and other drugs that were coming into these communities, because we saw a need, a major problem, in that we were seeing a lot of drug overdose here on the coast. In fact, we were the #1 place in the whole state on drug overdose. And so we did a saturation effort down here, much like what we're trying to do up there to combat a criminal element.
You know, let's talk a little bit about, I know with the legislature in session, there is an effort, and I know you have some ideas regarding this, police training, dealing with things like de-escalation, use of force, and all of these issues that not only make headlines, but also a lot of people are very concerned about. What are your goals in regard to that?
Well, there's been something in place since the '80s called the Board of Law Enforcement Officers Standards and Training, and that's made up of police chiefs, DAs, sheriffs, and state law enforcement. And so it's been in place for a while, but one of the things that they haven't had, they've really looked at training, and they hold law enforcement officers certifications. But they really never had the opportunity to go out and conduct their own investigations, especially if there's a public complaint against a law enforcement officer. So we're looking to revise that board, give it a little bit of more authority and some funding to hire investigators to address some of these public complaints that we might see, and then be more proactive on trying to address the law enforcement officers that could be causing problems. I know recently down here on the coast we had a former law enforcement officer plead guilty to, I think, a felony embezzlement. So we would like to get ahead of those things, because when you have officers that get caught up in situations like that, or ones that we're routinely seeing complaints with excessive force, we do a much better job for our whole profession if we address that early on.
Now, I don't want to dwell on this, but speaking of making headlines and going viral, if we go back to the Neptune parade last Saturday night in Biloxi, 4 officers with a guy in the ground, some kind of chokehold holding the nose, some punches, it looked to me, in the shoulder and in the arm, but it's really has the community talking. It didn't look good to me. You've seen it. What did you think about that?
It's one of those things where I understand the officers in that situation were trying to deal with somebody that had been combative or under the influence, and so when somebody wants to do it, rarely does look good. We had an incident with a trooper up in North Mississippi recently where some video got out and there was a lot of public complaints, and then once we were able to share the entire backstory and take a deeper look into what happened, most people realized the officer was acting well within their discretion.
But what do people not understand about, like they'll say, why are there 4 officers? Why do you need 4 officers there? Why do you need to be doing these various holding the nose or choke holds or anything like that?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things in law enforcement that we hope to address with better training, is making sure that when they do use certain techniques that they're up to date on their training, and that we always continue to monitor what it is that we're teaching. From what I understand, those techniques are still being taught. If they need to be looked at and changed, then this is an opportunity to bring the board together and hear from experts and change some of the training.
We have about 30 seconds left. I didn't know Mississippi didn't have mandatory driver's education for high school students. I mean, they had it back in the 60s in Minnesota when I was a kid. So you think Mississippi needs to get on board with that, huh?
It's time that it's mandatory. Routinely, Mississippi leads the nation in teenage fatalities. And we lose far more teenagers on our highways and byways in car wrecks than we do with active shooters in schools.
So do you think the legislature, to me, seems like it's a slam dunk.
I hope so. We got to look at some of the funding mechanisms, but we're hearing a lot of positive things, and everybody seems to be on board with it.
Alrighty, Commissioner Sean Tindell, always good to hear from you. Thanks for coming on and being with us this morning.
Great to be here.